It's time to begin. So let me introduce myself first of all, for those of you who maybe don't know who I am. My name is Darren Alf. I run the website at bicycletouringpro.com. And I have been cycling around the world and in various forms. At age 17, I cycled from Oregon to Mexico down the California coastline, and that was kind of the beginning of it all. Since then, I've cycled across the United States 6 times in different directions. I've been to, I forget how many countries all around the world, dozens and dozens and dozens, probably more than most people will ever see in their lifetime. And I've done it all on a bike. And since 2007, I've been running the website at bicycletouringpro.com. I've since built the site into what is the world's largest international bicycle touring website. I've written 4 books about bicycle touring and cycling in general, the most famous of which are The Bicycle Touring Blueprint and The Essential Guide to Touring Bicycles. Today, we're going to be talking about cycling in Scandinavia because I just got back from a 19-month-long bicycle tour in Europe and Asia, and the tail end of that trip was through the Scandinavian countries of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. And this is a part of the world that I know a lot of people are interested in going to on a bike, and there's a number of reasons for that, good reasons. And so I thought while my trip is still fresh in my mind, I would talk a little bit about what it's like to cycle in Scandinavia. And then at the end of my brief talk, I'm going to try to keep it short. I will open it up to question and answers so that if you guys have any questions that you want to ask me about cycling in Scandinavia or really anywhere in the world, you will have the opportunity to do that. There is a chat box here on YouTube if you're watching live where you can type in a question and I will answer it. While I'm talking here at the beginning, I'm not going to be looking at those questions. So if you type something in now, I won't read it. But as soon as I'm done talking, then I'll look at the chat box or any comments that you guys have left, and I will gladly answer any of the questions that you guys have. So that's kind of the plan for today. Let's get started. Okay, so Scandinavia, one of the things, you know, some people might not know that Scandinavia, where that is. It's in Northern Europe, and it consists of 3 countries, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. I used to think, I assumed, I guess, that Finland, which is right next to Sweden, and it's kind of between Sweden and Russia, I used to think that Finland was a part of Scandinavia, and only really recently learned that Finland is not a part of Scandinavia. And I think the reason that it's not is because Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, they all have Germanic roots. The people from those nations come from Germany. And in Finland, they have a more of a Russian. And so that's, I think, why Finland is not a part of what we know as Scandinavia. Finland, however, is a part of what we call the Nordic countries. And the Nordic countries comprise of Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, maybe a couple little other islands as well. So that's something that I didn't know even 6 months ago, and what do you know? So anyways, one of the reasons that Scandinavia is so popular as a cycling destination is because of the cycling infrastructure that's there. And by cycling infrastructure, I mean it's a bike-friendly place to ride because largely there are so many bike paths. And when it comes to bicycle paths, I think Denmark and Sweden take the cake. Like they really have bike paths everywhere practically. And this does make it enjoyable for a lot of people to ride their bikes. You can ride in a separated lane away from traffic and not have to worry about I don't know, a car steering into you or turning in front of you or something like that. So cycling, I think, in Denmark and Sweden is really a bike-friendly place. And the other reason I'm separating Denmark and Sweden from Norway is the fact that those two countries are extremely flat. And for a lot of people also that don't want to deal with the hills and mountains, two things that you do find a lot of in Norway, Sweden and Norway are a great place to ride. Now, when I was in Scandinavia just a couple months ago, I started in Copenhagen, Denmark, and then I cycled north along the coast of Sweden up to Oslo, Norway. And what I was surprised to see, like I was not surprised to see so many bikers in Copenhagen. Copenhagen is kind of like the biking capital of the world. It's a very flat city with bike paths that go everywhere, and everybody rides a bike. So I wasn't too surprised to see a lot of bikers there, but I was extremely surprised to see so many bicycle tourists in Sweden. Really, it got to a point where I didn't even wave at these people anymore because there were so many bicycle tourists passing me by on a daily basis, especially in southern Sweden. And I think that while I was there, I was like, why are so many people in Sweden? Like, I don't know, like, why are they coming to Sweden? But really, I think in large part, it's a flat area to ride. There's some good scenery. There's islands, no mountains really, but some really spectacular scenery. And there's these bicycle paths that go everywhere practically. So no matter where you want to go, you can get there on a separated bike path almost. Now that's not true for the whole country, of course, but for a lot of the big cities, any city that you really get to, there are bike paths. Out in the countryside, you're probably still going to be cycling on small, largely untrafficked roads, just like you would anywhere in the world. And so you do have to kind of be used to, you know, cars passing you, but there's not a lot of traffic and it's incredibly safe. And drivers in all of Scandinavia are used to seeing bicycles, and so they act accordingly and are extremely nice. I thought sometimes too nice, like I was like, go already, go around me, but they were like waiting and waiting for the perfect opportunity. So yeah, it's a really bike-friendly place. The reason I separated Norway from Sweden and Denmark is because it is a hillier, much hillier nation. And while I didn't personally find the mountains to be all that high compared to other places that I've cycled in the world, I know there are some big mountains in Norway, and it can be quite challenging. The other thing about Norway is that there are not as many bike paths as Sweden and Denmark. And part of that, I think, might be because of the hills. But I think also, like, in much of Norway, there is not a lot of car traffic. The roads can be extremely narrow because a lot of the roads go along the edge of the water. So it's like a very steep cliff on one side, you know, mountains going up into the air basically on one side of you, and then water on the other side. And so there's this very narrow road. But narrow usually sounds kind of scary and bad when we talk about cycling, but in the grand scheme of things, there's really not that many cars on most of the roads in Norway once you get outside of major cities and stuff. So I found cycling in Norway to be extremely enjoyable and safe, despite the lack of established bike paths. So I won't talk much more about that. If you guys want to ask me questions, again, you know, at the end of what I'm talking about here today, feel free. But just wanted to talk about the bike paths a little bit. As far as weather in Scandinavia, like, I planned my whole like 2-year long trip this past year with the goal of going to Scandinavia during the summertime because I wanted to make sure I was there during the best possible weather. Unfortunately, even in the best possible weather, it was still quite cold and it rained quite a lot. Um, like if I had to describe the weather in Scandinavia, I would say like just it's actually quite warm really, but just cold enough to make you uncomfortable if you're just trying to wear like a t-shirt. So it's like I almost want to just wear a t-shirt or a bike jersey, but I can't because it's just that little bit too cold. So most of the time, if you look at my pictures on bicycletouringpro.com from my recent trip to Scandinavia, you'll see that I'm usually just wearing my rain jacket over my jersey. And that was just this light jacket was enough in most instances to keep me warm while I was on my bike. In fact, I kind of wish I had a lighter rain jacket because I was a little too warm on some occasions. So I would recommend if you do go to Scandinavia, bring possibly a long sleeve jersey if you can get one, or a very, very light rain jacket. You also want to have maybe like a lightweight fleece jacket that you would wear under your rain jacket if it gets really cold. But on most days, you'll probably be just fine riding in a very, very light rain jacket. Another unique thing about cycling in Scandinavia is the fact that there are ferry boats that will transport you all over the place. Like in so many countries around the world, you ride on the roads, but in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, it's very common to take ferries from one location to the next, boats. And sometimes those boats are really the only way to get from one portion of the country to the other. While I was in Norway, Norway especially, I think I probably took 15 different ferry boats over the course of my trip there. And I was in Norway for about 58 days. So, you know, one ferry every 3 days or something, like 3 or 4 days. And I was a little fearful at the beginning of my trip, like how that was going to work. Like, would they all take my bicycle? How much were the ferries going to cost? That kind of thing. But what I discovered was that the ferries are all used to taking bikes. There was never any issue on board. So that wasn't a problem. I don't know. I think only on a couple ferries did I have to pay extra for the bicycle. And the cost of the ferries was extremely affordable, actually. I paid as little as $2.50, that's $2 US, 50 cents, to get across some ferries. The shorter ferries that were like 30 minutes or less to cross the water, those usually cost between $2.50 and like $8. So not a lot, really. The longer ferries, the ones that took 45 minutes to 2 hours or something, you could expect to pay anywhere from like $10 up to $75. And if I had to give you a tip about taking ferries in Scandinavia, it would be that if you want to save money, at least, you want to try to go on the car ferries, the ferries that are going with a whole bunch of cars. And the more cars, the better, because usually the ferry routes carrying the most amount of people had the cheapest prices. And the ferry boats where there was like you and one car on there, you ended up paying the most. So, and also the express boats. There are these things called express boats, which are pedestrian and bike only ferries. And these are the most expensive ferries to ride on that I found, at least. Like the one boat that I took that was $75 or $77, I think, was like a 2-hour-long express boat that took me around the islands of Norway. And I took a couple express boats, and they were all expensive, quite expensive compared to the car ferries. So that's my tip: is avoid the express boats unless you're in a hurry or you have lots of money to spend. As far as food goes in Scandinavia, it's kind of traditional Germanic food for the most part. Fish and meat is very heavy, and I'm personally a vegetarian. I didn't have a problem in Scandinavia. There was plenty of food to eat, but at restaurants and hotels and stuff like that, I did have some issues where the people serving the food were not confident in their abilities to give me something vegetarian. It just didn't seem like a common thing to have a guest that was vegetarian. So I found that really interesting because most of Europe is pretty used to vegetarian people. I mean, I was in even like Romania a couple months ago, and restaurants there had vegetarian options. So I was surprised to go to Sweden and see that they were kind of struggling to give me a vegetarian option. So food. The other thing, just briefly, that I enjoy about Scandinavia, and I'll talk about this more in a minute when we talk about camping. But in the forest, there are forests everywhere, especially in Sweden and Norway. And in the forest are wild plants. Some of these wild plants are strawberry plants and blueberry plants. And I probably consumed hundreds of dollars worth of blueberries and strawberries while I was there, but they're absolutely free. They're growing in the wild. They're safe to eat. You probably want to wash them off or something first, but they're growing everywhere, and I really like that about Scandinavia. I think it's really cool. Like I was camping in the forest a lot of times, and I would wake up in the morning surrounded by blueberry bushes, and I would just pick a bunch, and that was like half of my breakfast right there. So yeah, we're talking about food. I just thought I would mention the free blueberries and free strawberries. And a lot of you guys have been following my trip on YouTube. Thank you very much. I've been posting a new video from my Scandinavia trip every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so if you aren't subscribed to Bicycle Touring Pro's YouTube channel, you should be, because I'm posting a new video, like I said, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You'll see videos from my Scandinavia bike tour for the next 3 months or so. I shot a ton of stuff, and I'm only now getting a chance to upload it to YouTube. So make sure you watch those videos. You'll get a lot more information about cycling in Scandinavia, bike touring in general, and you'll just get to see what the place looks like. So check out those videos if you haven't done that already. As far as language goes in Scandinavia, I found that people were incredibly good with English. I did not have to learn 2 words of the local languages while I was there. I did learn a few words, but I really didn't have to. Most people speak incredible English, and it's not anything to worry about, I guess, if you don't speak Swedish or Norwegian or Danish or whatever. So yeah. What else? Money. This is one of the things that so many people have been asking me about recently. You know, how much does it cost to travel in Scandinavia? And this money issue was something I think that has been preventing me from going to Denmark, Sweden, and Norway for quite some time. Is I had heard how expensive it was, and I was kind of afraid to go there because of that. Many of you know, like, I'm trying to cycle across every country in Europe. I've been to, well, every country at this point except for Spain, Portugal, Belarus, and Russia. Those are really the only countries in Europe I haven't been to on my bicycle. But anyways, like I was kind of hesitating from going to Denmark, Sweden, and Norway because I had heard how expensive it was. Once I got there, I realized it really wasn't that bad. Yes, it is expensive. Food's a little expensive. Lodging is a little expensive. Entertainment is expensive. Going out for restaurants is certainly expensive. But really not as outrageous as everyone made it out to be. And if you go to bicycletouringpro.com right now and look on the right-hand side in the sidebar, like over here, there is a list of the most recent blog posts that I've written about bike touring, and the top 2 are about the costs of travel in Scandinavia. And what you'll see if you read that article is that, well, basically you'll see the total cost for my trip, but the most recent article I was talking about my self-supported bike tour, which was self-supported means that, like, when I'm traveling by myself, I'm not going with a tour company. I'm carrying my own gear. I make my own food. I camp in the woods. That's self-supported bike touring. And the portion of Norway, I think I was there 58 days in Norway. and Norway is like considered to be one of the most expensive places in the whole world. So 58 days, almost 2 months in Norway, and the total cost for me there was $799. So I spent $400 a month, basically, in the most expensive country, one of the most expensive countries in the whole world. So a lot of people say, oh, it's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. If you do it right, and bike touring is a very cheap way to travel generally, you can travel the world for extremely low amounts of money. My total trip in Scandinavia cost quite a bit more than that because I participated in some guided bike tours, self-guided bike tours, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But I think the self-supported part of my trip, where I was just on my own and traveling by myself, for Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, the total cost was like $1,132 or something like that for 2.5 months of travel. So pretty good, pretty good. As far as money goes, you can pay with a credit card practically anywhere. You need a credit card that has a chip in it. Americans, if you're watching, you need to get a chip credit card. I would show you my card, but I don't want to show you the numbers. But yeah, you need a chip and if you can, a PIN on your credit card. That's kind of the card that's accepted all over Europe now and is needed for the most part in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. I would carry 2 credit cards because I found at least that on occasion my one credit card would get declined and then the other one would work, and then I'd try it at a different place and the one credit card would work that time and the other one wouldn't. So I'd say carry 2 credit cards. Bring a debit card so you can pull out cash from the ATMs. That's very easy to do. You don't need to like stuff your pockets with thousands of dollars, which I know some people think you do have to do. But no, you don't have to do that. Just bring your debit card, pull the cash out at an ATM, pay with a credit card if you can. And if you want to carry cash, I think it's a good idea because there are some places still, even in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, where they don't accept credit cards, or maybe your credit card gets declined because you're from outside the country or something. So it's good to have cash, and I would probably carry about $100 US or less at any one time. I took a train in Sweden with my bicycle, and the ticket, I forget the exact cost of the ticket. I think it was about $50. And my credit card didn't go through with on the train or whatever. And luckily I had enough cash to get me to the next stop or whatever, where I could jump off the train and get some more cash or whatever. But if I hadn't had that cash, I think they would have kicked me off the train right away. So small amount of cash is always a good idea, but you don't need to be carrying thousands of dollars. Finally, I just want to talk about camping. Because camping in Scandinavia can be quite expensive if you camp at an established campground. I only camped at one campground. I think and this campground was in Copenhagen. I think it was about $12 a night or something like that, which wasn't too bad. But I ran into some other bicycle tourists in Sweden and Norway who had been staying at established campgrounds, and they were paying about $30 a night, $25, $30 a night to stay in a campground. And at some of those campgrounds, they had to pay extra, anywhere from like $2 to $8 just to take a shower. And some of those showers were even time regulated. So imagine paying $38 for a shower and a place to sleep on the ground, and then it's only like a 2-minute shower. So I found that camping at these established campgrounds was a bit pricey, and they're crowded also. So what I like to do, and what also allows me to travel for so incredibly cheap, is to camp for free in the forests. And in Scandinavia, there's a thing called everyman's right, or the freedom to roam. And basically, this is a law that gives the public the right to go on to public or private land for the use of recreation or exercise, including camping. So as long as you aren't on someone's private property, you can go off into the forest, set up your tent, and no one will bother you. And it's not against the law, it's kind of encouraged. So that's amazing. And it's not like that in a lot of other places around the world, let me tell you. So it's really, you know, for me at least as a bicycle tourist, that is really one of the best reasons to go to Scandinavia. Like I talked about other good things already, but I really enjoy the free camping and the fact that I don't have to worry that, like, if somebody does see me camping, they just kind of wave and say, hey, have a good time, you know? So yeah, free camping, that's awesome. I also found, I was surprised actually to find that there are free showers all around the country. These showers are near usually recreation areas. So like near a national park, near an ATV zone where people drive motorcycles and stuff like that, near boat docks, harbors, things like that. Like almost every harbor that I saw in Norway, for example, had like a shower area where people living on boats usually could come in and take a shower there. I think not all of them were free, but some of them were very cheap, like a couple dollars or something like that. And if you're traveling by bike and sleeping in the forest every night, it gets a little old if you haven't had a shower in a couple days. And so accessing these free showers that are all over the place is a great way to do that and save money at the same time. And yeah, so anyways, that's what I wanted to say about camping. Finally, this is seriously the last thing I'll say, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. But most of the time that I was in Scandinavia, I was conducting a self-supported bicycle tour. As I mentioned, self-supported bicycle touring is when you travel on your own without a guide, carrying all your own food, camping equipment, toiletries, clothing, etc. And you are basically on your own to decide, you know, where am I going to sleep every day? What am I going to eat? Who am I going to travel with? Where am I going to stop? All of that is decided by you. And you. and so that's self-supported bicycle touring. And my book, The Bicycle Touring Blueprint, which you can find at www.bicycletouringbook.com, is all about how to plan a self-supported bike tour, like what to pack, what kind of bike to ride, how to plan out a safe route, where to find showers and camping, you know, how to pick travel partners, how to convince your family that this thing is a safe and good idea to do. All of those things are kind of covered in that book. And the book contains like all the information that I have learned over the last 15 years of doing self-supported bike tours in dozens of countries all around the world. So there's self-supported bike touring. Then while I was in Norway, I didn't do any of this in Sweden or Denmark, but while I was in Norway recently, I participated in 3 different self-guided bike tours. And a self-guided bike tour is different than a self-supported bike tour. A self-guided bike tour is a bike tour that's set up by a touring company, a local touring company. And what they do is they create the route that you're going to ride, and they set it up so that your lodging and your food is all taken care of for you during the length of the tour. So each tour that I did in Norway, I did 3 tours with 2 different companies. The first 2 tours that I did with my friend Eric, who has never been on a bike tour before. And the bike tours that we did were with a company called Active Norway. You can check them out. Their website is active-norway.com. They do like cycling, hiking, a whole bunch of like outdoorsy sort of tours all around Norway. And so my friend Eric and I signed up to do 2 of their tours, the Hardangerfjord tour and the Around Sunnhordland tour. And really, this was a great way to travel, especially with Eric, who's a new person to bike touring, because self-supported bike touring, the kind where I sleep in the woods, is a little difficult for a beginner, someone who's never camped, who's never really ridden a bike or something like that. Like, you probably don't want to jump straight into that right away. And so self-guided bike touring is a great way to be introduced to bicycle touring, but also having like all the luxuries of home. Like, you have a warm shower every day, and you have all your meals taken care of and cooked for you, and you sleep in a warm bed every night. So it's really a great way to travel. And yeah, like, I encourage you, if you've never heard about self-guided bike tours, or even considered doing one, check out that company that I mentioned, activenorway.com. The other company that that I did a bike tour with in Norway was called Bergfrittig, a much more difficult name. But if you go to Google and just type in Fjord Cycling Route Bike Tour, you'll find my review and information on the company. But this was another self-guided bike tour that I did with my friend Caitlin, who had also never been on a bike tour before. She really loved the trip. I loved the trip. And again, it was a great way to travel. So yeah, there are a million different ways to travel in Scandinavia. You can go on your own. There are tour companies like the two I just mentioned that do guided group tours. Like, so if you want to go with a group of people, friends, family, whatever, you can do that with a guide who will escort you along the way. Or there are lots of self-guided bike tours where the company arranges everything for you, but you're basically on your own every day to travel on your own at your own pace. Pick your own travel partners like I did. I traveled with my friend Eric, traveled with my friend Caitlin. And yeah, and so there are so many different ways to travel in Scandinavia. And I want to open it up. I just want to stop talking so you guys can ask me questions, basically. Last thing I'll mention, if you're looking for a guided or self-guided bike tour in Scandinavia or anywhere in the world, really, you got to check out gobicycletouring.com. This is like a directory of bike tours all around the world. There are over 800 guided and self-guided bike tours on the website in like all of the major countries on the planet. So like, if you want to go to Brazil, you just go there. There's a map of Brazil, and you click on the tour, and you'll see the tour. Or you want to go to France, there are like 100 bike tours in France to choose from, and you can sort all the bike tours by price, by total number of days. Like, if you've only got 2 weeks or a week to spend in a particular area, you can sort it by, find 3-day bike tours or something like that. And yeah, so that's a great place to search. Even if you aren't interested in guided or self-guided bike touring, Go Bicycle Touring is a cool place to look, because you'll see where some of the best places in the world are to bike tour, just by seeing where some of these tours take place. So yeah, that's my last little tip before I open it up to Q&A. So I'll stop talking now for a moment, and I will flip over to the chat board here so you guys can ask me some questions. I'm going to read through some of the things you guys have been typing here. And if I missed some of your earlier conversation, I'm sorry. I'll go back and try to look at it now. But yeah, if you're watching live, there's a chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. You might have to be signed into YouTube to chat. But once you sign in, you can leave a comment, and I will try to answer. So let me look at some of the questions. Only Offer says, which country are you in at the moment? I am back in California for the first time in about 2 years. This is actually the bedroom that I grew up in. It's been totally redecorated since I left home. But yeah, I'm back in Southern California, kind of visiting with my parents and friends and stuff now. And I'm starting to plan for the next bike trip. I don't know exactly where I'm going to go this winter, but next spring I'm going to be back in Europe. I'm going to be biking through France, Spain, and Portugal for sure. And there's a possibility I might go to Morocco or Norway again, maybe Finland again, maybe even Russia. So still in the process of planning all that out at the moment, but I'll let you guys know as soon as possible where I'm going next. Yeah. Expat Mo says, there's a saying in Sweden, summer is the best day of the whole year. Yeah, that kind of, it wasn't quite that extreme, but it did feel like that a little bit. I can't imagine living in a place like Norway or Sweden. I think the summers are much too short where I live. Like, I mean, I'm in Southern California where every day is summer at the moment, but I live now in the state of Utah. I live in a ski resort town when I'm not traveling. And so for me, at least, there's too much snow and not enough summer bike riding. But yeah, so anyways, can you describe how landscapes and nature looks like from the bike perspective in Sweden? Can you reference it to Poland from your experience? P.S. When will you be traveling in Poland again? Yeah, so as far as like landscapes go, I guess I think I should talk maybe more about Sweden first, but Sweden is like an endless forest of just pine trees, basically, from top to bottom, and in between there are little towns with like no hills. Like on one of my most recent YouTube videos, I mentioned that the hills in Sweden are funny, I think I said, because like they're so small and gradual, it's hardly a hill. But yeah, that's kind of what Sweden is like, an endless forest. Norway is a little bit different because there are hills, fjords. A fjord, I don't know how to describe what a fjord is maybe, but it's like a big glacial cut through a mountain range that goes straight into ocean water. But yeah, there are lakes, fjords, big mountains. And in Norway, I was going to mention that earlier. Thank you for bringing it up. But I think like if you do go to Norway, which I totally recommend, it's a beautiful place. If you go to Norway, a lot of people I know, especially on bike, are trying to avoid hills. And I understand. I don't really enjoy going up hills either sometimes. But in Norway, the best way to view the country is from up high. Like you can cycle along the water. Like you could spend your whole bike tour just cycling along the water, and that's great. Like it's really beautiful to do that. But if you really want a spectacular view, you've got to go up high, and that means riding your bike up a big hill or leaving your bike down at the bottom of the hill and hiking up to the top. Or sometimes you can take a bus or drive. That's cheating though. But yeah, like some of the best views that I had in really all of Europe were up high in Norway. So that would be my big tip, I guess, is like if you go there, make the effort. Like it might take you all day to get up to the top of some of these mountains, but it's totally worth it. So yeah. Conal's Adventures says, could you rent touring bicycles easily in Scandinavia? No, not exactly. You can rent bicycles quite easily, actually, in Scandinavia. Finding a touring bicycle, however, might be more difficult. My book, The Essential Guide to Touring Bicycles, is a book all about how to find the perfect touring bicycle for you and the bike tour that you're planning. And in that book, I talk about like what makes a touring bicycle different from other types of bikes. And there are quite a few things. At first glance, they look very similar, but there's quite a few things that make them different. And unfortunately, these sorts of bikes are not exactly easy to find. I did run across a few people in Scandinavia while I was there that had rented bikes, but basically they were riding like hybrid bicycles, which were more like city bikes with not very many gears, which a traditional touring bike has lots of gears and lots of low gears to help you go up hills and carry a heavy load. And the bikes that these people were riding did not fit that at all. So they were getting by, you know what I mean? But the bikes were far from what I would consider to be like appropriate for touring. If you do want to get a touring bicycle in Scandinavia, you're probably going to have to call around a lot. And frankly, I don't know of any companies off the top of my head that do have that kind of stuff available. What I usually recommend to people that are looking to rent a bike somewhere is go to that website, gobicycletouring.com, that I just told you about, gobicycletouring.com. Find one of the tour companies that operates in that area that you're wanting to tour in and contact them. And even if you don't do a tour with them, they might be able to help you rent a bike. Like some of those companies rent bikes themselves, so you can rent them straight from those companies, or they usually work with local bike shops, and so they can point you in the right direction towards a bike shop that would have a bicycle that's appropriate for bicycle touring. So that's like usually what I tell people is go to Go Bicycle Touring, contact one of the local companies, and ask them to help you rent a bike. Someone is asking, isn't it illegal to free camp? No, it's not illegal, not in Scandinavia. That's what's so great about bicycle touring there, in my opinion, is that if you're on public land in the forest or something like that, it's not illegal to camp, and you'll see quite a few people doing it actually. But if you go to bicycletouringpro.com and type in stealth camping, you'll see my article all about how to camp in a secluded area, and so that you aren't being bothered basically by people walking past and stuff. Like there's a lot of open, empty space in especially Norway and Sweden where you can just camp. Denmark, I think, might be a little bit different, but even in Denmark, there are like free, open camping areas, and so where you can just, they're basically like parks kind of that are set up for camping, and you can go in there and camp for free. What else? Greetings from Romania, greetings from Poland. Yeah, both of those countries I've been to a lot. Poland and Romania, a lot of you guys know those are some of my favorite places to bike tour. Hi, everybody. Hi from Brazil. Have you been there? No, I haven't been to Brazil. There's so much in South America that I haven't seen. I really want to get down there sometime soon. Hi, why don't you come to Iran? Another place I'd love to come. Pedro is asking, how much would you say you eat cycling all day? The truth is, I probably eat about the same amount as I do when I'm at home. I think like a lot of people have this misconception that you have to eat a lot more on a bike tour, and maybe that is true actually. But if you lead like an active lifestyle when you're at home, you're probably gonna be just fine once you hit the road. I think what happens is if like you lead a very sedentary lifestyle where you're sitting in an office chair all day and not exercising, and then you go on a big bike tour where you're cycling for 8 hours a day, then yeah, you're probably going to increase your food consumption, especially at the beginning. But if you lead an active lifestyle and you're kind of used to consuming lots of calories in order to produce a large output, then you're probably not going to eat a whole lot differently than you do at home. So yeah, that's all. John, I'm butchering your name, Eidson, asks, how did it go without taking cooking gear? In the last couple of years, for those of you who don't know, I've been traveling largely without a camp stove. Most bicycle tourists who are traveling for weeks or months on end travel with a portable camp stove. And for the last several years, probably since 2007 or so, I've been traveling without a camp stove. And, you know, to be honest, I don't really miss it at all. And even in a place like Scandinavia, where I was cooking my own food every day, preparing my own meals, I really did not miss the stove one bit. If you watch my YouTube videos that I've been posting recently with Pablo and Anna and their dog Hippie from the website at bikecanine.com, Pablo and Anna are a couple from Spain that I met in Copenhagen, Denmark. They've been traveling across Europe on their bicycle with their dog. We just met kind of by chance in Copenhagen and decided to cycle together kind of up towards Oslo, Norway. And so we spent a week or so cycling together, and in that video you'll see Pablo cooking some meals over his camp stove. He and Anna are carrying a camp stove so that they can cook warm meals. I am not carrying a stove, and so it was nice, I have to admit, to have some warm meals when I was traveling with Pablo and Anna. But as soon as I left them, I really kind of just got back into my old ways and didn't miss it so much. But so anyways, it's just something I think you have to try and yeah, see if you miss the stove that much or not. John Timothy Ratcliffe says, how do you move your stuff into a different country? I don't know exactly what you mean. How do I move my stuff? Do you mean how do I cross the border on a bike, or how do I live in different countries? I'm not sure. Explain further and I'll try to answer later. How do you not get bored when riding your bike for long periods of time? That's a good question, actually. One, I think you have to learn how to entertain yourself. And I think when you ride, there are certain things to think about, like where you're going and and what you have to do that day. Like I have to get to the certain destination, or I have to buy some food to eat for dinner tonight. So you're always thinking about those kinds of things. Like those are usually in the front of your head. But there are other things obviously to think about too. Like you can think about where you are in the world and how it's different than what you are used to, you know, or things that you've learned along your route that you might like to use in your normal life when you get back home. I like to learn at least a few words of the local language when I'm traveling in a foreign country. And so I spend some time usually on my bike just trying to memorize certain words that I can use on my travels. But I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, which I download for free and listen to on my smartphone. I would recommend that highly if you're not into podcasting. Check it out because it's really, really cool. It gives you some really neat things to think about. I also read a lot of books, all of which I just read on my phone. I don't carry a Kindle or anything like that. It's one more device to carry it on my phone. I have hundreds of books on here that I read. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. And then I talk to people and stuff too while I'm cycling. So all of those things. And I think like I've been traveling on my own for 15 years, so I'm very used to being on my own now. Like I don't have, I know some people struggle with being by themselves, even just for a few minutes. So I think that's probably something that you have to learn just as you go along. And some people I know like have never been alone before and they're planning trips around the world. I don't think that's generally a good idea. Like I think you should try to do a overnight bike tour, like one night. See if you can handle being by yourself for that one night first before you go off and do a much larger trip, you know. And if you can handle the one night, try another 2-nighter trip or try a week-long trip by yourself and see how that goes before you go into something much bigger. So anyways, I'm trying to look at your questions here. Silent Peace Walk says, I'm looking at a map right now. Can you tell me the big cities you've been to? Every big city I've been to? That would take a while. I think if you're talking about big cities in Scandinavia, I went to Copenhagen, Gothenburg, Oslo, Norway, where else? Bergen, Norway, Trondheim, Norway, and then my bike tour finished in Umeå, Sweden. those are probably the big cities that I went to in Scandinavia, all of which were great. I liked them all. Con Alfioras says, too many mosquitoes in Scandinavia? Yeah, I have to admit, I'm covered in bug bites at the moment. There are quite a few mosquitoes and ticks also. And these little midges, they're like, you almost can't see them. They're so small and they bite you with these little tiny bites that aren't that bad, actually. The mosquito bites and ticks are worse, I think. But to be honest, like I was really surprised at how few mosquitoes and bugs in general there were in Sweden and Norway. I was in Finland last summer and I got killed by the mosquitoes there, like really just killed. But Sweden and Norway was actually really good, even in the forest. Like usually that's where you get bitten, is not on the road. Like on the road, I didn't see a mosquito the whole time practically in Norway and Sweden or Denmark. But once you climb into the forest at night, that's where you're getting into like swamp territory where there's still water and breeding mosquitoes and bugs and stuff. So you got to be careful. And yeah, they're out there. Bring some bug spray and some, you know, cream to treat them and stuff. But they really aren't that bad, and it's not a reason to like avoid the country at all. Kathy Balach was asking, did you cycle the Rallervegen in Norway? And the answer is yes, I did. Not the whole thing, but a part of it with my friend Rob. If you watch, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll see the video of me and Rob cycling on the Rallervegen, which is like an old railway that they've turned into an off-road bike path. It's like a dirt bike path. And this was probably the section of Norway where I saw the most bicycle tourists. There were so many people on bikes doing this Rallervegen section. I'm butchering the name, but yeah, that's a great place to cycle. So beautiful. You're cycling basically like past lakes and snow and mountains and sheep, and like it feels like you're cycling on the North Pole sometimes, kind of. Really, really beautiful. So yeah. Where somebody was saying, hold on, the questions are going by too quick. Okay, David Granieri says, hi Darren, I'm thinking of bringing my skateboard with me on my next bike tour, like I saw in one of your videos. Do you still think it's a good idea? Actually, yeah, I think that is a good idea if you like to skateboard. In 2005, the year after I graduated from, 2005, 2006, I don't know. The year after I graduated from university, I did a bike tour from Canada, kind of down through Washington and Oregon State in the United States, and I brought a skateboard with me on the back of my bicycle. Kind of stuck off the back a little bit, but it was really cool because I was able to stop and go skateboarding at these skate parks all along my route. And it just turned my bike tour into something more than riding my bike. Like it gave me another reason to travel and go somewhere new. So yeah, like if you like to skateboard, give it a try. I thought it was fun. Just be careful, because you like, one of the things that I talk about in the bicycle train blueprint is like keeping yourself safe, and like I do a lot on my bike trips to ensure that I don't get hurt. And you know, skateboarding is slightly risky in that regard. It's like you don't want to be by yourself and break an ankle. So just be careful, I guess. Darren, I was asking how you pack up a bike and equipment for a longer move by train or plane. Do you ship some of it ahead? Oh, okay. Now I understand, John. So John is asking, like, how do you get your stuff from one country to the next, basically? And especially if you're going internationally, I think. And the answer is I usually fly with it on an airplane. And I talk about this inside the Bicycle Terrain Blueprint at great length, like how to pack your bike and all that kind of stuff. But what you do is you pack your bicycle inside of a cardboard box for the most part. That's usually what I do. A cardboard bike box. And you can get these boxes for free at your local bike shop. Just ask them if they have an old bike box. You get the box, you pack your bike in there, and then you pack your other stuff, your camping equipment, your clothes, food, whatever, into another box. And you fly the 2 boxes basically to wherever you're going. And then once you get to your destination, you unpack the boxes, put your bike back together, put everything on your bike, and then cycle away. And that's how you do it. So that's kind of a short answer, but if you go to Bicycle Terrain Pro, I talk about it there. Inside the Bicycle Terrain Blueprint, my book, I talk about it there. And you'll probably see me do it in some of the YouTube videos that I have on my channel. So, yeah. What podcast do you recommend? I already listened to a few, but would be interested to know what other good podcasts are out there. Well, let me look at what podcasts I like to look at. I mean, some of these, I like to listen to a lot of like business podcasts and stuff. But like This American Life, that's a classic, of course. Hold on, I'm pulling up my list here. So yeah, I use this app on my phone to access different podcasts. So I have criminal, detective. I listen to the Freakonomics radio podcast. I listen to some language podcasts that teach me how to learn different languages. I like this podcast called Lore, L-O-R-E. It's kind of like about scary monsters and vampires and things like that. There's a good one called Mystery Show. I like, what else? I like Invisibilia, Radio Lab. There's a really good one I like called Strangers. That one is good. The Moth Podcast, etc. So those are a few that I like. Hello from Durham, England. What do you do to secure the bike from theft when you're camping? It's always a concern for me. Or am I just paranoid, basically? That's a good question. When I'm camping in a campground, is different than when I'm just camping in the forest by myself. So when I'm in a campground with other people walking right past my tent, then yes, my bike is locked up. That's basically it. Like, I lock the bike to a fence, a pole, or to my tent itself, sometimes both. And then I usually take everything off the bike, all my panniers, my everything, clothing, food, etc. And I put that stuff inside my tent, basically. There's no lock on my tent, but most people, I think, are not going to open up your tent and dig around in there for the most part. So you don't have to worry about that too much. But I still wouldn't like put my stuff in my tent and leave it there all day unguarded, probably. So camping in a campground is one thing, but when you're out in the forest, like most of the time, like in Scandinavia, for example, like there is no one around, no one. And no one's going to find me. Like, if they do, it'd be incredibly unlikely. Like, the chances are very slim. So in those instances, I don't lock up my bike at all. Like, and that's probably why in Scandinavia, I really only locked up my bike a handful of times during the 2.5 months that I was there. Just like when I went into a supermarket, sometimes I'd lock up my bike. And when I was at this, you know, public or campground, like established campground in Copenhagen, I locked up my bike. But other than that, like, the bike is rarely ever locked, largely because it's rarely ever out of sight. And that's really the most important part of keeping your bike safe, is you just don't leave it for very long out of your sight. Don't leave it at all. So yeah, if you don't want to lose your bike, keep it close. And if you do have to leave it, lock it up and take as much of your stuff with you as you can. Francisco is asking, how are the roads in Scandinavia? I kind of talked about that a little bit as far as the bike paths and everything go. The roads are in extremely good condition. One of the things I was going to talk about that kind of did annoy me a little bit about the bike paths in Scandinavia is, for example, I'm going to just use my phone here as an example, but like imagine that the edge of this phone is the road, like the road, and you're here and you're trying to get here. Well, sometimes the bike path would go like over here, you know, and like kind of follow the road, and then it gets you to your destination. That's fine. That's lovely. You know, even if it does add like 5 extra kilometers or whatever to your total route, the fact that you're on a separated bike path that gets you to your destination, awesome. But sometimes the bike path goes in some really weird direction that adds like so many kilometers. Like you're here, for example, the bike path goes over here, then like over here, and then back over here, and then like down here, and then over here, and then back over here. Those types of bike paths drive me crazy when I'm bike touring, because all I'm trying to do is get from here to here. Like, and even though it is nice to be on a bike path, I don't want to do like all of this just to get here. And I did come across some of these bike paths in Sweden, especially, where like if I just cycled in the road to get here to here, it's going to take me 20 minutes. But if I follow the bike path here, it's going to take me an hour and 20 minutes. So there were instances where like there was a perfectly good bike path right on the side of the road, but I wasn't in it because I was cycling in the middle of the road just trying to get to my destination. So yeah, that does happen sometimes, and I guess it's a judgment call as to whether you want to cycle on the bike path, you know, and do that whole loop-de-loop, or just get to where you're going. So that's like, I mean, regular bike riding stuff, but it happens everywhere in the world, I think, that kind of thing. Dylan Monk is asking, how long do you like to ride each day? Do you go for a kilometer or time or checkpoints? Do you ever do yoga to break up longer rides? The answer to that question kind of depends on where I am in the world, or where you are in the world, and you know what your goals are and that kind of thing. A lot of people, like if you're doing a guided trip where everything is planned out in advance for you, like your hotel stays and that kind of a thing, like, you know, when you wake up in the morning that there's a 50 kilometers or whatever that you have to cycle in order to get to your destination, and you have to get there somehow. Like, that's it. Like, because the reservation has been booked, the food is waiting, you have to get there. But when you're traveling on your own, and you have a little bit more time, like I've been on the road for 19 months, there was no schedule every single day. It was a very loose schedule of like, I kind of know where I'm going and I kind of know when I want to get there, but there weren't these like strict deadlines like you might have if you are on a 1-week holiday and you're trying to pack in as much bike touring as possible. So I guess the answer depends. Like, there were portions of my trip where I was only riding like 20 or 30 kilometers a day. 20 or 30 kilometers is like 15, 20 miles, basically. Those would be short days. And longer days, I was cycling in excess of 100 kilometers per day, which is maybe closer to, you know, 60, 80 miles per day. So it just depends on where you are in the world, what your goals are, and also like sometimes the terrain that you're in dictates how far you need to cycle. For example, I was in South Africa a couple years ago, and the towns, when I was like riding through the desert, would be very far apart, sometimes like 100 miles or something like that. And so that distance kind of told me like how far I wanted to ride. If the road was 100 miles, I would say like I can do 50 miles a day, and then so that will take me 2 days to get to the next city where I can then fill up on food and water. So then I would know 100 miles, 50 miles a day, that's 2 days, and I need to pack 2 days of food and water on my bike. But so like that's an instance when the city or the landscape dictates how far I ride that day. But like in Europe, the cities and stuff are so much closer together that you don't have to do that quite as much. I've said, I've cycled across America 6 times and portions of Canada. The cities can be sometimes 100+ miles apart, and so you really do have to kind of plan out your days a little bit more. Whereas in Europe, there's a new city every 5 kilometers up the road, so it makes planning a whole lot easier, basically. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but you also asked about yoga. I don't do yoga, but I do stretch. I guess if you consider yoga a kind of stretching, then yes, I do yoga. But no, I don't do yoga. I stretch a lot. And I do think that's important, especially if you're camping, because you ride your bike all day, you're exerting yourself, and then you climb into this tiny little tent where your muscles are like contracted. A lot of people that go on long bike tours suffer with cramps and stuff. You need to make sure you're hydrated, and you need to make sure you stretch a lot. So do those 2 things, and I think you'll be okay. Okay. What about visiting the UK while in Europe in the spring? I've been to the UK several times, actually. I was there last year. I was in Ireland, Wales, and England. Didn't make it to Scotland, but it was, yeah. I know a lot of Bicycle Terrain Pro readers are from the UK. Thank you guys for tuning in. I don't know. I think the weather got to me when I was there. Even in the springtime, I was cold and wet most of the time I was in the UK, and it didn't make my time there too enjoyable, to be honest. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be coming back anytime soon, but I'd love to go to Scotland. I really want to go there because I haven't been there yet, and I'd love to see it. So. Lee or Joel, I'll answer Joel's question. Pedro says, been to Portugal? No, I haven't, and I'm going next year, Pedro. I'm going to be there next year. I'm looking forward to it a lot. I'll be biking through France, Spain, and Portugal in the spring, probably like April or May of next year. We've already been going for 1 hour and 10 minutes. I'll answer a few more questions. I'll stick around for a while as long as you guys are asking questions. And then I'll probably go at about 11:30, so 20 more minutes if you guys want to hang around that long. Joel is asking, how does it feel to be home? It feels weird, to be honest. Like, it was very strange to go from, I don't know, like for the last 2 years, I've been basically in places where they don't speak English as the native language. So like, that was probably the first thing I noticed right away, was like I could understand conversations like way far away from me, and not just one conversation, but like multiple English conversations going on at once. Usually that background noise is just gibberish to me. So that was the first thing I probably noticed. The second thing I noticed is here in California, especially, how much people speak with this like Valley Girl sort of talk, and I hear it in my own self, like, oh my God, like that sort of like I hear that a lot now in the way that I speak and the way that other people speak here. That's kind of interesting. Something I didn't hear maybe when I was growing up. The other thing I think that, well, the thing I'm kind of enjoying at the moment is not having to pack up my stuff every day. Like, so I'm staying with my parents right now, but like it's been nice to go for 5 days and not have to pack up my bicycle, because when you're traveling for 2 years, like almost every day, I'm packing up everything I own, putting it on my bike and pushing that bicycle down the road 50 miles or whatever, and then unpacking at night and then doing it all again the next day. And I think like I've been bike touring for 15 years, and at the beginning of my bike trips, I really loved packing. Like, oh, it's so much fun, because I think when you're packing for a trip, like you're thinking about all the adventures you're gonna have and how great it's gonna be and stuff. And it's true. I like totally love packing. That was probably like my favorite part of bike touring at the very beginning. Now I think things that I liked at the beginning. I don't like so much, like packing. I'm kind of sick of packing. But there are other things that when I first started bike touring that I really disliked. Like I really disliked camping, for example, when I first started bike touring. And now I love camping. Camping's like my favorite part of the bike touring experience. Like I love just going out in the woods and finding a good secluded camping spot and sitting in my tent, reading a book or cooking up a meal or something like that. So yeah, things change, I guess, the more you do these sorts of trips. But yeah, I don't know. I could probably talk for an hour about how it feels to be home after such a long trip. Lee, sorry, I guess I skipped your question. Your question was, when you have a chance, please comment on how you manage video and photos while traveling. Yeah, that's a good question because I shoot so much when I'm on my bike tours. And for the average bike tourist, I'm guessing that the average individual going on a bike tour, whether it's for a week or even a longer period of time, is going to be fine with just traveling with their smartphone and taking pictures that way. For me, I'm running this website, bicycletouringpro.com. I take photos for magazines and stuff sometimes, other websites. And so I take my photography a little bit more seriously than maybe your typical individual. And so I carry my smartphone, which I do take some pictures with, but almost none. I take most of my pictures on a DSLR camera, which is like this, you know, a much bigger, more professional camera. And I also have a GoPro video camera that I use to shoot all of those YouTube videos that you've probably seen of me. Yeah, so I take a lot, shoot a lot of photos and shoot a lot of video, and that requires a lot of hard drive space, which is why I travel with two, not just one, but two of these external hard drives. These are Western Digital hard drives, which I've found to be pretty good. And so I travel with two of them, and I do double backups basically of all my photos, so that I have one copy of all my photos and videos on here, and I have another copy on here, so that just in case one of these hard drives were to get lost or broken, I would have another copy on this other hard drive. And I also use Flickr, which is like a photo processing. It's flickr.com. Photo storage sort of service from Yahoo to back up all my photos online as well. And so I put all my photos and videos and stuff on there just in case my hard drives got lost. Then I have a digital backup. But because I am traveling by bike and don't have access to the internet all the time, these hard drives are the first thing that I back up to. And the Flickr, the online backup, I do that only when I have access to internet and I have the time to upload all those photos. And that can be really, really difficult to do, actually, when you're traveling in a foreign country. Just because I don't have the time, don't have computer access, and oftentimes the internet is slow, so slow it would take years to upload all the photos I've taken. So that's kind of how I do it. I mean, it's hard to explain, but like almost every day, or maybe like every other day, I back up my photos, move them over onto the hard drive, sort them into folders by the date and country that I happen to be in, so that I can go back later and say, you know, like 2014, you know, where was I? And then I can say, okay, I was in Ukraine, and then here are all my Ukraine photos. That's kind of how I do it. And I could probably write an article about that in the future for Bicycle Touring Pro. But yeah. What other questions do you guys have? Francisco says, how is Caitlin? Greetings for her. Yeah, she's doing well, I think. I think she really enjoyed the bike tour in Norway. I'm excited to share the video from that trip with you My friend Caitlin and I spent like a week cycling in Norway together, as I mentioned previously, and um, we did the fjord cycling route bike tour. It was Caitlin's first bike tour, and she did really well. She was a speed demon on the downhills. Like, we'd get to the top of the hill, and she would be like, "Oh boy, a downhill," and just like so fast, like faster than I would ever do it. And so yeah, I think she had fun. But yeah, I'll be posting a bunch of videos from my bike tours with my friend Eric, Rob, and Caitlin over the next couple months, basically, on YouTube. So watch out for those coming very, very soon. James says, is there a book about your travels in the future? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I think I might just blog about the trips and stuff. I'm not sure I'd ever write a book. If I did, it would probably be little anecdotes, little story from here, little story from there, something like that. Because the truth is, like, a lot of people, I think, when they start dreaming about a bike tour, they think that like every day is going to be incredible, you know, that like, and in a way it kind of is, but like, it's incredible to yourself, you know, like it's not always something that someone else is going to be interested in, not every single day, you know. And so they're like, I've been doing these trips for 15 years, and if I had to say like pick out your top 10 days or something, I could do that, you know. But there's no way I could write a book about all 15 years, I don't think. It's just too much, and maybe too much of what's already been said. Like, there are a lot of good books out there about bicycle touring. My favorite of which is probably Alistair Humphrey's 2 books that he's written about it. Thunder and Sunshine is the name of one. I'm blanking on the other one at the moment. Thunder and Sunshine. Oh, shoot. Anyways, it's called Moods of Future Joys. That's the other one. It's a 2-part book about his bike tour around the world. If you're looking for a book to read about cycle touring that kind of captures what it's like to travel the world by bike, those are the 2 books I think you should read. And frankly, I think Alistair has done a much better job capturing the spirit of bike touring than I probably ever could in that sort of like documentary style. So check out those books. What else? Hello from Taiwan. Hi, I was in Taiwan. I loved it there. It was awesome. I was in Taiwan last winter, like in November, December. If you guys have been following along, maybe you know that. What do you think about camping and traveling in Norway, Sweden in October, November? I think it would be cold and probably wet, and you need to be prepared for like complete winter cycling. Yeah. So, because like I left Umeå, Sweden just 2 weeks ago or so, and it was getting quite cold at night, like close to freezing sometimes. And I think you could probably start encountering some snow and stuff there now. So if you want to learn how to cycle in the wintertime, check out wintercyclingbook.com. It's another one I wrote. Woo! And all about cycling in the wintertime. Everything you need to know, from like how to equip your bike with snow tires, and what, most importantly, like what kind of clothes to wear, how to layer properly, that kind of a thing. So I probably wouldn't want to do a deep fall tour in Scandinavia. I think summer was cold enough, cold and wet enough. I think, I'd be careful going too far, like in November, for example. Totally possible, but just, it's not for beginners, I guess. Mosin is asking, how do you manage toilet needs? Good question, a little embarrassing to talk about. For the most part, I have a toiletry kit with everything in there that I would normally have at home. But the one essential that probably every bicycle tourist needs to be carrying at all times is a roll of toilet paper. And this is so in case you need to go to the restroom and there is no restroom around, you can go. This is especially important, like I was camping in the woods every single day while I was in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and I did not have access to an established toilet every single day. So yes, I was going in the woods, and you dig a little hole and you lean up against a tree, and and then you cover it up. So that's kind of how it goes. But yeah, probably I think maybe this is one of the reasons you see, you know, more men on bike tours, self-supported bike tours especially, is because it's much easier probably for men to go to the restroom than it is for women when you're on the road, and that probably does get to you after a while. But yeah, it's really easier than you think it is. It's not really that big of a deal. You just have to get some practice. Okay, enough about that topic. Hi, your pannier is filled with tent, sleeping bag, gear, etc. How heavy are they in total? Joe Smith asks. Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do not recommend most bicycle tourists carry as much stuff as I do. Because I travel by bike for my work, I am carrying a lot of work-related stuff with me that I don't recommend you carry. Like I'm carrying a big laptop computer, 2 external hard drives, a DSLR camera battery, 3 cameras, chargers, you know, 2 sets of shoes, all this kind of stuff that maybe I wouldn't necessarily recommend for you. That being said, the typical bicycle tourist, like probably with all that stuff loaded up, like you probably want to aim so that your bike is around 60 pounds or so. I think that's what, like 40 something, not 40, 30, 25 kilos, 28 kilos or something like that. And yeah, like 60 pounds. My bike probably weighs closer to 100 pounds. When you put water, food, and all that stuff on there, probably somewhere between, yeah, 95 to 100 pounds. And that is really like pushing it. Inside the Bicycle Train Blueprint, I recommend to people that their bike does not weigh more than 100 pounds. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, I recommend to people that your bike should be light enough that you're able to pick it up and carry it for a certain amount of time. Like, for example, like you want to be able to pick up your bike and carry it up or down a flight of stairs without having to take all your bags and stuff off. If you can't pick up your bike and do that, your bike is probably too heavy. Also, like you need to pick up your bike, put it on a train. Like if you have to take all your stuff off, that sucks. Or if you're out in the forest and there's a log, you know, that's fallen over the trail, you just want to be able to pick up your bike and put it on the other side of the log. But if your bike is too heavy, you can't do that. So keep under 100 pounds for that reason, but also because if you fly with a bicycle, you are usually limited to carrying 2 bags with you on the plane. Like your bike is in one bag and your stuff is in another bag that you then check. And so like you have to normally, like most airlines have a 50, some of them have a 40-pound weight limit. And so so this your bike has to weigh less than 50 pounds, the box there, and the bag with all your stuff in it has to weigh less than 50 pounds. So that's the other reason. When you put those 2 together, equals 100 pounds, and that's why I recommend your bike weigh less than 100 pounds. But if you can get it down into that like 60 to 80 pound range, that would be ideal. Especially, we're talking now specifically about self-supported bike terrain where you're traveling with a tent and camping gear and clothing and all that kind of stuff. If you're doing a shorter bike trip, or you're doing a trip like Caitlin and I did in Norway, where we're just carrying our clothes and staying at hotels every night, then your bike could weigh way less. Like most bikes weigh 20, 25 pounds or something like that. And then maybe you're only carrying like 10 extra pounds of clothing and toiletries, and that's it. So you could have a bike that weighs 35, 40, 50 pounds maybe, or something like that. But yeah, for self-supported bike touring, I would aim for that like 60 pounds, 80 pounds tops. And once you get in the 100-pound range like me, bike touring becomes a whole lot harder, and I wouldn't recommend it. Anyways, what else here? Yeah, so I think that's it, guys. It's almost 11:30. I've been on for an hour and a half. I don't want to keep you for too long. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned a little something. I hope I encouraged you in some small way to maybe consider a bike ride in Norway, Sweden, or Denmark, or if not there, maybe somewhere else in the world. If you want to learn more about how to conduct your own bike tours, check out my book, The Bicycle Touring Blueprint. You can pick it up at bicycletouringbook.com. If you're in the market for a touring bicycle, check out touringbicyclebook.com. If you want to go on a guided or self-guided bike tour, check out gobicycletouring.com. And if you just want to see the pictures, watch the videos, or learn really anything there is to learn about bike touring in general, whether it's a short trip near your home or a trip all the way around the world, bicycletouringpro.com is the main website. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. If you have other questions that maybe I didn't answer, you can always send me an email. A big part of what I do each and every year, you know, I spend hundreds of hours riding my bike, but I also spend hundreds of hours answering emails, replying to comments, posting stuff on social media, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to get in touch with me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, et cetera, all those places are good places. I'm on Instagram. Send me a message, say hi, and I hope to see you out on the road one day. Thanks so much, guys. Adios. And until next time, bye.